on the staff gets a doctorate. Because that is what you have in research libraries. And gradually, you know, the first week I sent out a memo on how I wanted the phones answered. Don't insult us, Dr. Winston. You know how to answer the phone. You don't know how to answer it the way I want it answered. This is going to be different. Now, the reason I went through this harangue about a university, when Dr. Cheek put his initials on that budget, it was clear to me that our peer relevant institutions were the top ones in the country. I knew we didn't have the same money as Folger, for example. The Folger endowment is almost the same size as Howard University's total endowment. But I went down there, looked at their conservation facilities and their photoduplication facilities, and then took the Japanese advantage. We could get better equipment because we were getting newer equipment. And then we had to get very good people to operate it, who knew what they were doing. And they went all over the country looking at best practices. As far as I was concerned, we were competing with Beinecker at all of those. Not to be like them in terms of collection or even style, but to be a first-rate, university-based research library. Now, I think we have had a reference point problem. I think every department in the university, every school in the university, ought to have some number of institutions that they regard as the competition. And that we have a reasonable chance to compete well with those, not pull up the drawbridge and say, Howard is this refuge. Professor Tillett and I used to have regular, disagreeable arguments about that, because he thought Howard was a refuge from the world and race and segregation and so on. And of course, I didn't think that at all. The people that taught me here were first-rate people. They weren't some marginal folks. They had been affected by the system, but when they got in that classroom, they were dealing with me as a student, and they knew what they were doing. And I think we have faculty right now at this moment. I am not a nostalgia buff about Howard yesteryears. We have faculty right now and staff right now that simply need a plan, some leadership, some cooperation, some appreciation, and some clarity about what we are doing as an institution. And I think that is doable. And I think it's possible for us to realign resources so that Moorland-Spingarn can live within its university means and then get external resources. But that requires a certain outlook. Professor Traylor, you have a question?
Well, but I think we are agreed upon that. You asked the question a moment ago that if the university would receive, or if any particular university would receive a certain amount of money, what would we do with it? I know what we would do with it and are doing with it, because it seems to me that in addition to preserving the mother lode of the intellectual capital of this university, which is Moorland-Spingarn, second to that is signaling the direction of the scholarship at this university, which is already in the leadership. It is this university's whose scholarship has led the discourse, which now influences even the public discussion. So endowed chairs, which seek.
Yes.
I realize that the funding for those cannot come from the coffers of the university's capital budget, anything like that. But one of the things, maybe in the recent years that you haven't been here to see, is, and I stand to be corrected, a somewhat shall I say failure, in the Office of University Advancement. That is the office which, in correspondence with programs of divisions, the college earnestly raises money in that regard. Sterling Allen Brown is the pioneer professor here in the study of African American literature in the entire academy. He mounted it here, and so forth. I'll stop with him. Yes, it is self-interest, because I am simply involved in the research, but the department is involved in the research which he began. And that research directly and implicitly involves the research collection that we have. That program goes. The Department of English, I'm not being self-interested, the Department of English has fashioned a program that involves what is reposed at this treasure repository, and is not reposed elsewhere. Yes, we've looked at the competition. We offer a graduate degree in Caribbean literature. No one does. And so on. I mean, and I believe that this kind of, this describes the potential, if not the possibility, and if not the announced desire of many departments. But this discussion doesn't come to the floor. We're raising it now. I'm not complaining, that's not limited. It doesn't come to the floor, it's our fault. But as there is now a present committee for academic renewal of the youth, it seems to me that these issues of priority that you raise, when you ask us, what can we do with money?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that this is another one of those opportunities, and there is no reason why that cannot be worked out. But as I say, it involves a change in our institutional culture.
Yeah.
And because I think in terms of developing the future, we've got to operate on two separate planes there. One, the endowed chair route for senior people. But what I see as Howard's opportunity for future development is even more heavily invested in the notion that you seek the very best assistant professors you can find, and you develop their careers, and some of them will stay here. Some will go elsewhere, and that's fine. But if we develop a reputation for being a place where a person will be given opportunities to develop their career, and the people who are here and unhappy, and they've been rebuked and they've been scorned, and they want to cut this assistant professor down to size, that the department chairs will understand what's going on and run interference, because that is simply what goes on. And because we cannot mobilize overnight, even if we could, I'm not even sure we can, mobilize the resources to recruit substantially at the top. And quite frankly, I think that's a mistaken strategy.